Recently, I had an experience with credit card fraud that caused so much unnecessary stress and anxiety. I spent hours on the phone and in chats with my credit card company. I had to get two different cards before the fraud stopped, and I was so worried about what was going to happen to my money in my bank account. And I sometimes have the fear that it's going to happen again, right? And that's why I'm so excited to introduce You Are the Healer's newest sponsor, Aura, an app for protecting online data and personal information. Cleaning up my information not only helps reduce the amount of spam I get, but it protects me from hackers who could use this information to help them access things like my social media accounts, bank accounts, and other sensitive information. Protecting yourself and your personal information is a form of self-care. I swear. Go to my sponsor, aura.com/healer to get a 14-day free trial and have peace of mind knowing your information is safe. Again, that's Aura, AURA.com/healer for your 2-week free trial. You Are the Healer is sponsored by BetterHelp. Therapy is mandatory because there's absolutely nothing wrong with seeking help. I think every person who walks this earth needs therapy, honestly. I'm stoked to be connected with BetterHelp to offer affordable and accessible therapy resources. The link is in my show notes, and you can also go to betterhelp.com/healer. That's better, HELP.com/healer. Now let's get into this episode. Hello, and welcome back to You Are the Healer. If you're new, hi. My name is Sydney Rindernecht, and this is the podcast called You Are the Healer, where I use my experience as a psych nurse and working in mental health, along with my experiences and my own mental health journey, to educate and motivate you and remind you that you are your own healer when it comes to your mental health journey. And if you're not new here, thank you so much for your continued support. I feel like especially recently, I've had a lot of people messaging me about the episodes, like completely unprompted before I even do any social media promoting or spreading the episode. And that just means so much to me that there's some people who really loyally follow the podcast. And it means so much to me because it means that you are dedicated to yourself and your own healing journey. And so much of humanity is collective. So when one person decides to heal in any way, shape, or form, that truly benefits the entire collective of humanity. So I just think that's really, really awesome. Thank you so much to everyone who's followed my Instagram, my TikTok, who's spread the message, who's posted on their stories, who's texted it, shared it through word of mouth. If you're watching the video, I have this cute new little baby tee that says "You Are the Healer." I got it on Etsy, and so I think I want to start doing merch at some point. I've heard some interest expressed in that, so I'm very excited to have that as part of the journey. And if you're also watching the video, either on Spotify or YouTube, this cutie little necklace I have, it says "Changing," and I got it from a So Far Sounds concert. There's an artist called Cameron Cade. I'll link her stuff below. She's absolutely so talented, and she was selling these at her concert. And I just think "Changing" is a really beautiful piece of jewelry to wear in the season of Metamorphosis. And so in this season of Metamorphosis, this episode, we are talking about inner child healing. And I am so excited. This has been a topic I've wanted to talk about for so long because it's helped me transform myself. And it's so relevant to this season of Metamorphosis because it's almost like doing inner child healing is nurturing yourself into that safe cocoon to feel able to change, to feel accepted. And so part of metamorphosis and transformation when it comes to yourself is nurturing yourself and soothing yourself. And sometimes it means you're forming a safe space for you to have an experience and to process things and to go back and heal some things so that you can propel yourself forward. And so you would not be able to become this free flying butterfly if you have things that are unaddressed in your childhood, if your child self is running the show. And so I'm super, super stoked today to talk about inner child healing. It is something that has profoundly helped me on my mental health journey. I know that it's been a topic in a lot of different spaces. It's kind of a buzzword, especially a couple months and years ago. Like inner child healing was so big. And I'm just really excited to share my experience and my journey with it and help you help yourself. So let's get into this episode. If you've listened to You Are the Healer before, you know I typically like to break down my episodes by what, why, and how. So what is inner child healing? Inner child healing is the therapeutic process of addressing and healing unresolved emotions, trauma, or negative beliefs that stem from childhood. So it's really going back and revisiting, sometimes, unfortunately, those really painful memories, revisiting your trauma, revisiting, the first time you had this negative belief about yourself. So that way you can learn from it, heal from it, let it go, and then move on. Because a lot of the times, if we don't address, talk to, heal our inner child is running the show. And when you're a child, you don't have a lot of information. You're really just trying to figure it out. A lot of times we jump to assumptions. And so letting your inner child run the show is really not a great way to go. We want our adult selves to be calling the shots. We want our fully formed brains to be making decisions and beliefs about our life. So that is what inner child healing is, and we will talk more about it throughout this episode. I'm really excited. I'm going to leave you guys with some journal prompts at the end. And I think this is such an important topic, so I'm so excited. Okay, why is inner child healing? Why do I want to revisit these traumatic memories? Why do I want to unpack things in my childhood? It's so much easier to avoid it. Understood. So inner child healing allows you to better understand yourself, because when you reconnect with these childhood memories, when you go back and you revisit things and you process it and you think about it, you can explore those painful memories, you can get curious about them, and you really want to do the ones that were rather painful, maybe times where you felt neglected, suppressed, invisible, like those really tough ones, because usually those tough memories created a belief. You created a belief from those memories and you made a story that is literally running your life. So it's important to do inner child healing so your childhood stories aren't running your life, because most of the time they're not even accurate anymore. And they can also impact your current behaviors and emotions. So if you repressed an emotion as a kid, you might be behaving in a certain way now because you haven't allowed yourself to feel and process that feeling. And I'm super excited to do this episode after doing the Feel Your Feelings episode, because now we know how to feel our feelings. Okay, if you haven't listened to it, I think it's really helpful. And feeling your feelings is a great tool for inner child healing. I'm going to tell a little bit of a story of one of the first things of inner child healing that I ever did. And I think our memories are really, really strong. And so you can kind of pull yourself back into that memory. So one of the first things of inner child healing that I ever did was going back to the first time I ever felt fat, which was very painful and uncomfortable to do. But then I was able to allow myself compassion and to talk to my younger self. And I really, that feeling of being scared of being overweight or being insecure because of how I looked, that really decreased when I went back and I healed that first memory that I had of feeling fat. So I remember I was in fifth grade. I was in Maine. My family used to vacation in Maine for like a week in the summer sometimes. And I was at a clothing store. I was with my dad, and I was trying on long sleeve shirts. I guess I like didn't pack right. Surprising if you know me. Sometimes I forget some essential items when I pack. Okay, so I'm in fifth grade and I'm trying on this, like, I remember it so clearly, this light pink long sleeve shirt. And I remember putting it on and it was a little bit too small and you could see my entire belly button through the shirt. And I remember looking at myself in the mirror and being like, oh my God, like I'm fat. And just feeling like utterly devastated and like very insecure. And like, I remember I left that store feeling really, really bad. And so part of inner child healing for me looked like closing my eyes in a really safe, almost like meditative state and just visualizing that memory again. And then having my adult self talk to my younger self and say like, hey, I know you don't like the way that you look right now. And that's okay. And it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. It doesn't mean that you're less deserving of love. Whatever you need to say, you can take your adult self back to that memory and visualize you visiting your younger self and healing that for you. Because then those suppressed emotions or those negative memories, that trauma, isn't going to run your life anymore. And I can't think of one person that wants their life to be run by trauma and repression and negative emotions and memories. So inner child healing is so important because not only can you better understand yourself and why you operate, when you go back to those core memories, you're like, oh my God, no wonder why I'm insecure. I had this feeling at such a young age, right? Not only do you better understand yourself, you're connecting with yourself too, because your psyche is part of this whole, right? And so part of you is this childlike self and this adult-like self and your teenager self. And so when you revisit this memory, you have a better understanding of yourself and you unify all of these parts of you to be the best version of yourself. And when you understand yourself, then you can give yourself more compassion because you're like, whoa, I'm not a terrible person. This behavior is coming from this really intense memory. Another reason why inner child healing is so important is because inner child healing allows us to recognize where our unmet needs were in childhood. And this is important because if you have unmet needs in childhood, which don't we all? Okay, don't we all have unmet needs from childhood? I mean, no one came out of childhood unscathed. Almost everybody has trauma. So likely you have a lot of unmet needs, or at least some to address. And if you don't address them later in life, if you don't heal those parts, then you will chase those unmet needs in your adulthood. So for me, this looked like me every episode, hey, I'm sensitive. But I grew up and I was very, very sensitive. And I truly felt a lack of emotional validation growing up. All I wanted was for someone to tell me that my feelings were valid. And I didn't have that. And then I repressed my emotions, which whole other rabbit hole. But what that looked like, because I hadn't healed that unmet need from childhood, in every single romantic relationship I was in, literally until like 2 years ago, I would unconsciously seek out people that could validate my emotions. That was like the number one thing. If someone could validate my emotions, I would literally ignore every single red flag because all I wanted was my emotions to be validated. Okay, so if you have these unmet needs, and there's so many needs that you could have had go without validation or go without addressing or having those needs met. So, your sense of safety, that could be a huge unmet need. If you had a really rocky childhood, you could have not had a sense of safety in your home. And so then subconsciously, you are going and looking for that need to be met in your life. You might have felt a lack of love, so you were going and seeking that out, right? There's so many different areas in our life. And so I keep saying this, but if you don't want your child self to run the show, then you got to do inner child healing. When you do inner child healing, you also become more self compassionate to yourself. When you are able to see your childlike self, you are much more able to speak to yourself nicely. Because if you're talking to a little kid, you're not going to be like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with you? Why are you sad again? You know, if you have a relationship with your inner child and you're able to picture them in your head, then you're going to speak a lot nicer like you would to a child. You're going to say, oh my gosh, what's wrong? It's okay. I'm here for you. I love you. Right. And so we are able to be more self compassionate with ourselves when we have a relationship with our inner child, when we heal our inner child. We're more able to nurture ourselves. So instead of going out and trying to get our unmet needs met, we are going to meet them ourselves. We are going to be able to become our own caretaker and nurture ourselves and give ourselves what we lacked growing up. Inner child healing is also important because it allows us to release those stored emotions and start to process them. And so, a lot of times in our childhood, we have repressed emotions like grief, anger, sadness, really intense things. Where if you listen to the Feel Your Feelings episode, there's so many negative effects from storing your emotions, from keeping them bottled up and not expressing them. So we can get physical symptoms, we can get headaches, stomach aches, nausea, all of this stuff. Okay, we can have these behaviors that we don't like because our repressed emotions are running the show. And so inner child healing allows you to process those things that, you know, I feel like a lot of people had to grow up really fast, you know, and so you might have felt like your childhood was robbed from you. It was taken because you were forced into an environment where you had to be an adult. So that might come with a lot of grief. That might come with a lot of anger at how unfair it is that you didn't have the chance to just be a kid. Okay. And if you have that anger in you, that is no place to be. There's a lot of suffering that comes from having your emotions repressed. And so inner child healing allows you to process that and let things go and move on. If you don't master your emotions, if you don't let yourself feel them, they will control you. You will be operating however your repressed emotions want you to operate. And it's in your control to feel your feelings and to learn from them and to move on. And the last part of why it's so important is inner child healing allows us to integrate our childlike parts of ourselves back into us. We can integrate the lessons that we've learned from our childhood. We can integrate those fun, playful, innocent like parts of ourselves because our psyche is built up of all of these different parts of ourselves from all of these different ages. And inner child healing allows you to incorporate your childlike self into your current self. And so that way you might be more authentic. You're going to be more true to yourself, because I truly believe that we are the most ourselves when we're kids. And then we get all this conditioning and all these lessons and assumptions and trauma, and we change how we are. We operate how the world teaches us to be. When you incorporate inner child healing, then you are able to be your true self, the self that you were when you weren't thinking what anybody else thought of you, when you weren't considering, getting hurt or fear or how everybody else is going to react. You're going to be true to yourself. And that can, there's so much potential with that. You can have better relationships. You're better able to manage your emotions. Your self-esteem is better. There's infinite ways that inner child healing can benefit you as an adult. Okay, your childhood is a part of you. You can't go back and change it. Okay, I find a lot of peace in knowing that, or believing that everything happens for a reason. And I know that sometimes people can see that as toxic, but it truly helps me because, I didn't come out of childhood unscathed. There's a lot of things that really deeply affected me. And knowing that everything happens for a reason, knowing that there's a greater purpose in these painful experiences and these memories, it really helps me take those as a catalyst to grow. Okay, because you could choose to sit back and say, no, I'm a victim, everything's so unfair, I didn't deserve anything that happened to me. And I totally want to say, it's not your fault what happened to you as a kid. I know so many messed up things happen in this world. Okay, and I no way want to say that it's your fault that anything that happened in your life happened, but I do want to encourage you that now it's your responsibility. You've had these experiences, you can't go back and change them. What are you going to do about it? You're responsible for how you operate as an adult. And yes, you might have been neglected as a kid, you might have been left by yourself, and that's completely unfair and it's not your fault. But how are you going to change now? How are you going to take those experiences and do better for yourself? Because it's your responsibility now. And you could choose to sit back and say, woe is me, which I'm very guilty of. No shame if you're there. I'm sending you love. Or you could choose to learn from your experiences and say, you know what, I'm gonna do different now. I'm going to take my experiences and I'm gonna level up because of them. I think we all now definitely understand why inner child healing is important. So how do we heal our inner child, you may ask? I have a lot of different strategies. So something that I want you to do, and you can do this in your own time, and I'm also going to do a meditation at the end where we're going to do this, but visualizing your inner child and get as specific as you can. Okay, like, what shirt did you wear all the time? How did you do your hair, and I like to always think of, with inner child healing, the younger the better. But even as I'm saying that, there's times in your life where really painful things happen. And so that might not be when you're the youngest that you can picture yourself. That might be when you're like 12 years old. And so I want you to just get really specific when you're visiting these past memories. Think of exactly who you were at the time of that memory. Think of how you looked, who your friends were, what did you do every day, and just really go back and revisit your old self, because having those specific details is just going to make it that much easier to have a relationship with your younger self. Okay, so when I think of my younger self, there's so many different ages that I could think of, but the one that came to my mind, I was in 5th grade, and there's actually a picture of me in this scenario, which maybe I'll post it on the You Are the Healer Instagram if I'm feeling brave. But I was a little chunky as a kid, so we'll see. I'm in a blue plaid Justice tankini. Okay, it was a 5th grade end of school year pool party. Okay, so I'm having a grand time. I'm in a tankini. If you know, you know. That was such a trend. And I was hula hooping, and I had a butterfly temporary tattoo in the middle of my forehead. And when I think of this younger version of myself, I have a lot of compassion for her, because in 5th grade, I was really badly bullied. So I had no self esteem. I was horribly insecure. But when I'm picturing this younger version of myself, it's like this juxtaposition of still really having this childlike innocence and still like loving to swim and loving to hula hoop and really still being a child, but also having these really negative experiences. So that's just what I picture my inner child like, at least today when I'm thinking of her. It's like this little, like, wet haired 5th grader. And that really allows you to have compassion for yourself when you picture yourself as a young kid, because like How could you be mean to a little fifth grader who's just doing her best? A big strategy with how we are going to heal our inner child is, unfortunately, it's hard work. Most meaningful things is identifying your childhood wounds. And there's a lot of different ways that you could do this. You could visualize it in your head. You could really, it's important to establish like a safe space and to feel good about it before you do. Don't visualize your childhood trauma if you're having a bad mental health day, okay? Really like take it at your own pace. Give yourself a lot of grace and compassion as you're doing this because it's going to be difficult most likely. So you can visit those old memories in your head and you can tell your younger self what they needed to hear at the time. And you can picture your current self or maybe even your higher self coming and talking to your childhood self and parenting your childhood self and really getting those needs met so that you're not letting them run the show anymore. Another great way to address childhood wounds is to journal about it. And I will leave some journaling prompts at the end of this, but journaling is a great, very quick way to access your subconscious. And with journaling, you can write to your younger self and you can write from your younger self. So in writing to your younger self, once you've kind of identified those wounds and those memories that you want to go back to, you can write, hey, Sydney, this is, or fill in the blank with your name. This is, 25-year-old Sydney, and I'm writing to you and I'm sending you so much love. And you're just going to pour into your childhood self. You're going to tell your childhood self everything that they wanted to hear. Things that, it's going to be okay. Everything works out. I promise you, like things are going to get better. Really think of like the wisdom that you have now. You can give that to your younger self. And there's a part of me that really believes in like this spiritual connection. Like if you currently send, like, let's say I'm currently sending my fifth grade self some love, then in some really confusing way of time space reality, my fifth grade self feels a little bit more peaceful because I'm sending my fifth grade self that. And yes, I know that time is linear, whatever. So technically, like that doesn't work, but that's kind of what I believe is like when you're your higher self and you're sending your past self some love, then at the same time, that past self gets that message somehow. Not sure how. Science, I haven't proven it, but that's kind of what I believe. So, anyways, so you can write to your younger self and really like pour into yourself. I love writing myself love letters. And so you can write your younger self a love letter at literally any age. So like I had a really rough teenagehood, you know? So I have written my teenage self letters from my higher self or from my current self now. And that's been really, really healing. You can also write, which I think is honestly even more powerful, writing letters from your younger self. And so depending on the age that you want to write from, something that I think I saw it on Pinterest or something, you can write with your non-dominant hand. So that way it's more like childlike handwriting and it almost like accesses a different part of your brain, which I think is really cool. So you can, especially if you're really wanting to talk from your younger self, this is a great way to express your feelings and vent your frustrations about your life. So, let's say I want to be my 5-year-old self. I'm going to get into a headspace and get specific with visualizing. Okay, who was 5-year-old Sydney? What was she like? What was she frustrated about? What feelings did she have? And then you write with your non-dominant hand. You're gonna say, like, this is 5-year-old me, and I'm so frustrated because, and you fill in the blank, or I'm so sad because I keep seeing my parents fight, or there's so many different experiences that we have, and so you're going to write kind of venting your life to your current self. And that can be really, really healing. And I found that every time I've done that, things have come up that I'm like, whoa, I didn't even remember that that happened. Like, I didn't even know that I felt this way. And so that can be a really easy way to access those memories that you've been repressing. Another way to access our inner child is to ask the people you grew up with about your younger self. And so this is something that I've done a lot with my mom because my mom was always around growing up. So she has a lot of like memories that I totally don't even remember as a kid. And another thing that I've done with my mom is I've had her send me pictures of myself as a kid, like of various ages. And so that way I have like a true representation of what I looked like as a kid. And then it brings those memories back of, oh my gosh, I remember wearing that shirt. I wore that shirt to this birthday party and yada, yada, yada. So you can really ask the people in your life, hey, do you have any memories of me as a kid? Especially if you have a lot of childhood trauma, you might not have a lot of memories easily accessible, which is totally okay. Your brain does that to protect you. So you can ask the people, if you have a working relationship with your parents, your siblings, grandparents, aunts, uncles, whoever was around when you grew up, ask them, hey, what was I like? What did I like to do? Do you have any specific stories that you remember? Things like that. And then if you do get pictures of yourself as a kid, this is one of my favorite tools for inner child healing. Put up a picture of you as a kid, preferably in front of a mirror. And that way, whenever I find sometimes when I'm looking in the mirror, I can be a little harsh on myself. So whenever you're looking in the mirror, if you have a picture of your younger self, you're way less likely to be mean because you're like, oh, that's me. Like that little kid is me. Wait, I actually have a picture of, I think I'm in preschool in this picture. This is me and my teacher, Miss Jackie. So I have this in my room and I look so freaking cute. I was so blonde. I had bangs. I'm in a little dress. So putting a picture of yourself up around just reminds you to address your inner child, that is still a part of you, that that part of you is as real as anything else. And so I love having pictures of myself as a child in general, but especially as a visual cue for myself. And it's also really nice to just like see pictures of yourself growing up, because there's memories that aren't so bad, right? Like there's this picture of me and my twin sister Ava, and we're at our, I don't even remember how old we were, probably in fourth grade or something. We're at our birthday party and we're blowing out our candles on our super nice cakes. I'm like, oh my gosh, I totally forgot about that. So accessing these picture memories or videos or home videos, whatever, is a great way to have a relationship with your inner child. Inner child healing gives us the opportunity to reparent ourselves. And so we can provide ourselves, our adult selves can provide our younger selves what we lacked in our childhood, what we lacked growing up. Things like love, validation, safety, belonging, acceptance. Okay. And so inner child healing allows us to nurture ourselves and to give ourselves those things that we lacked so that they're not calling all of the shots in our lives. Reparenting yourself, being really intentional about that. Like I said, it's not your fault what happened, but now it's your responsibility. So instead of being hung up on the fact that you had to grow up, that you felt like you lacked something in your parents, you now can be that parent to yourself, which is such healing work. Like that's literally what you are the healer is like you are the person healing yourself. You are reparenting. You are your caretaker. And anyone that's an adult now, like that's your responsibility. And being hung up on the fact that things were unfair growing up, being hung up on, oh my gosh, I was so hurt in the past, how is that serving you? How is clinging to your victimhood doing anything for you now besides helping you avoid the responsibility of becoming your own caretaker? It's not serving you. And so we have the choice now to parent ourselves, to give ourselves what we need. And we know ourselves more intimately than literally anybody else ever will. So you have the ability to be the best parent for yourselves. Our parents are human. They're doing their best. They had a lot on their plate. You know yourself vastly better than anybody ever could. You know what you like, what you dislike, what you need. And so you are able to meet your needs more effectively than anybody else. And the last strategy for healing your inner child is engaging with your inner child. It's playing, it's silly, it's so much fun. And so I've had so much fun engaging my inner child recently. Just ask yourself, like, what did I like to do when I was a kid? And I can think of so many things I like to do. The first one, which if anyone knows me in my real life, you won't be surprised even for a second. I loved to swim as a kid. I loved to swim so much that anytime I was at the pool, my parents were trying to get us to go, I would go underwater and pretend like I couldn't hear them. And it was like actually like a problem. Like I would do it a lot. So inner child healing for me now looks like prioritizing things like prioritizing swimming. I bought goggles a couple years ago. Best $12 I've ever spent. So I love like lap swimming, and lap swimming not even for like exercise, but lap swimming like for fun and silliness. Like I'll do like dolphin dives if anyone was a swimmer. Or even recently, I was backpacking Europe with my besties. So much fun. I brought goggles with me. I didn't know if there'd be access to swimming, but I always bring a bathing suit and goggles because you never know. You just never know. And we impulsively went to Interlaken in Switzerland, and there was a diving board. And oh my gosh, I used to be a diver in high school, and I hadn't been on a diving board in years. And so I was doing front flips and back flips, and I was like being so silly and so playful, and that was really a fun way to heal my inner child. So I know that a lot of self-healing work can feel heavy and, oh my gosh, I don't want to do this. But engaging your inner child can be something that's so much fun, because like think of the things you loved to do as a kid, like bouncing on a trampoline. That is fun. That doesn't have to be difficult. Okay, so it's engaging those parts of you that as an adult, I might get on my soapbox here, adults don't prioritize play at all. At all. Think of playtime as an adult. We work, we exercise. We don't even really exercise for fun. We exercise because we feel like we have to look a certain way, or because people tell us to, or we'll feel bad about ourselves if we don't exercise. There's no structured adult playtime. Okay, now sometimes I think about like the gym is kind of like an adult playground. But that's only if you're having fun. You know, not everybody has fun at the gym, okay? And so there's so many ways to prioritize playtime in our lives and to be silly. I don't think our society values that very much. So that's why we haven't been doing that. But there's so many other things. So like I love to dance. I love busting a move. I don't care what I look like. When I hear music, I have to move my body. It's involuntary 99% of the time. So engaging my inner child looks like dancing. Taking an adult hip hop class. Oh my god. So fun. I love it. But it also means dancing whenever you feel like it, you know? And not suppressing that part of you that wants to express yourself. Inner child healing is prioritizing those things that you really like to do. So when I was a kid, I loved journaling. I loved writing in my diary. And so I really prioritized journaling still, because when I was even very, very young, I knew that that was a skill that was so, so, so helpful for me. So some questions I want you to ask yourself, and I'll put these in the show notes so you can dive deep in journal, or you can even self-reflect with them now, is what were you like when you were younger? And in what ways have you lost touch with this part of you? Like most adults, we've lost touch with our playful selves, with those things that we really like to do. Like maybe you used to love to sing, and now you don't do that at all anymore because it doesn't fit in your schedule. How can you incorporate more of that into your life? So, asking yourself, what did you like to do most as a kid? And how can I do more of that now? How can I prioritize this? And it doesn't have to be hours and hours into your schedule. It can be something really, really simple. The last journaling prompt is, what was a really painful memory you had growing up? And usually I feel like listening to that, there's something that comes up right away. What was a really painful memory you had growing up? How did it make you feel? What did your younger self need to hear at that time? And how can you soothe yourself from that memory now as an adult? To wrap up this episode, we are going to do a inner child guided meditation. So if you are driving, if you're with other people and now is not the time to meditate, you can go ahead and pause this episode and then resume it when you're ready to listen again. So what I want you to do is find a comfortable seat. Maybe you can lay down. Get as comfortable as possible. Find yourself a nice cozy cocoon inside of yourself. And I want you to close your eyes. You're going to take a deep breath in. And you're going to exhale and just drop into this moment. And take a couple more deep breaths in through your nose. And exhale through your mouth. Release any tension. Now I want you to picture your childlike self. I want you to picture yourself when you experience something really hard. And really visualize this in your head. Where were you? What were you wearing? Who was there? And I want you to revisit how this memory, how this event made you feel. What sensations in your body do you notice? What thoughts are coming up as you visit this memory? How do you wish the people around you responded? And now I want you to visualize your higher self visiting your childhood self in this memory. Picture them walking into frame, and I want your current or higher self to talk to your younger self. You can crouch down to their level, you can sit right next to them, you can offer them a hug if that's what they need. And I just want you to visualize yourself talking to this younger version of you. What do they need to hear? And I also want you to picture this younger version of you venting to this current or higher version of you. You know, maybe your younger self says, "This is so unfair. Nobody's listening to me. I'm so tired of feeling this way. Why did this have to happen to me?" What does your younger self have to say right now in this memory? And now I want your higher self to respond to your younger self. What do they need to hear? Maybe it's things like, "I'm so sorry this happened to you. It's not fair at all." Maybe they need some encouragement. "Hey, it's going to be okay. You're really strong and brave, and I know you're going to get through this." And I want you to tell your younger self, "Anytime you need me, I'm here for you. I love you. I support you. And you're a part of me. I will never abandon you." And I want you to visualize yourself giving your younger self in this memory an embrace, a hug. Maybe they cry to you and you hold them. Maybe you hold their hand. Maybe you're just looking at each other. Whatever your younger self needs. And I want you to say bye to your younger self and remind them that I'm not going anywhere. I'm here anytime that you need me. And then I want you to visualize your higher self or your current self leaving that memory, and notice how different your younger self feels. What are the emotions now? Are they more soothed? Are they more calm? And just know that you can give yourself this gift for any memory, any time. You have the tools inside of yourself. Deep breath in and exhale. You can wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes, roll out your wrists, your ankles, and come back to this moment. And know that you are your own caretaker. You have the ability to parent yourself and meet those unmet needs. You have all of the tools. You are the healer. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I appreciate you infinitely. Please share the podcast, share the YouTube video, the TikToks I'll make clips of with anyone who needs this message, which I believe is everybody because we all have childhood selves. Thank you so much for listening. You can support me in the links below, and I'm rooting for you. I love you, and I send you so much love and support as you heal your inner child.